This video sponsor, Lost in Cult, best known for their high-end premium deep dive books on games like Outer Wilds, Valhalla, and Animal World, they've just launched one of their biggest collaborations to date, the Alan Wake Design Works book. Made in collaboration with Remedy Entertainment, this is the ultimate tribute to the entire Legendary series, giving a deep dive look at both of the main titles, as well as its spin-off American Nightmare. Get 5% off your purchase when you use offer code SkillUpAlan at checkout. Click below to grab it now or stick around to the end of the video to learn more. Gamers, what's happening? Good to see you back. Here's the thing, with Gamescom out the way, there hasn't been a lot of really big news this week, so we're going to do something a little different for this week's show. We typically go deep on 2 or 3 big stories at the top of the show before moving on to a bit of a lightning round, but this week we're just going to spread things out a little. We'll cover even more stories with a little more brevity. Honestly, I'm kind of pumped about it, since there's lots of interesting stuff going on, but none of it needs like a 5-minute block. Anyway, always better to show instead of tell. So let's get to it. If you really press me, I will admit that there was one big news story this week, and it's the news that finally, 400,000 years after it was initially announced, and after the most thunderous prolonged silence in the history of silences, Hollow Knight Silksong finally has a release date, and it's next week? That's right, that is not a troll. You can hang up your Hollow Knight clown makeup meme JPEG forever, because on September 4th of this very year, just a week from today, Hollow Knight Silksong will ship to all consoles and PC. This was revealed during a dedicated showcase at Gamescom in Germany, and attendees were able to go hands-on with the game during the show. The reports are that it's more Hollow Knight, and people wouldn't have it any other way. This is not a sequel that's looking to rewrite the formula, since the formula was already basically perfect. It's more about a more versatile moveset and an expanded combat repertoire, and everyone who got their hands on it had nothing but positive stuff to say. So why the lengthy development timeline? Was Silksong stuck in development hell as we all assumed? It's a question put to Team Cherry by Jason Schreier of Bloomberg, and the response was basically the exact opposite of what we were expecting. We've all heard of development hell. How about development heaven? Quote, "We're very fortunate that we have a development method that is so enjoyable. Not exactly sure how we stumbled into that. Everything comes together quickly, you can see results fast, ideas turn into something that exists in the game almost immediately before your eyes, and that's very satisfying. And that allows you to go off on these tangents and meet weird characters because someone's offhandedly mentioned a weird character as an idea and the other person's laughed, and that's enough," end quote. Jesus Christ, boys, your average game dev has a permanent 1,000-yard stare as they relive the PTSD of crunching on some bullshit live service that they don't want to be working on, and these guys are just out here daydreaming about how much fun they're having. To be honest, it's a nice story that's all about Team Cherry harvesting the benefits of their talent and success, so good on them, and it's really admirable that they're focused on just making something cool and taking their time to make it, rather than scaling up and turning Hollow Knight into some big corporate thing that sucks. One interesting byproduct of Team Cherry's Shadow Drop release date is that it's prompted a number of other games, mainly indie games, to get out of the blast radius, announcing delays rather than risk going toe-to-toe with what will likely be one of the best-selling games of the year. Aeterna Lucis is a Metroidvania sequel that was meant to launch in September but will now launch sometime in 2026. Here's what the developer had to say, quote, "After the announcement of Silksong, we are fully aware that our game wouldn't have the visibility it deserves. Competing with a phenomenon of that scale would not only be unfair to our team's efforts, but also to you, the community, who expect to experience this adventure under the best possible conditions. Instead of rivalry, what we feel is gratitude. Thanks to them, the Metroidvania genre is more alive than ever, and in fact, they were one of the main inspirations that led us to create Eterna Noctis and the entire saga now in development," end quote. Feyland is another Metroidvania currently in development that was about to hit 1.0 on September 9th. Now, not so much. Quote, "This wasn't an easy decision. We've poured years of work and love into Feyland, and we want to make sure it arrives at a time when it can receive the attention and care it deserves," end quote. Even non-Metroidvanias are running for the hills. Clover Pit is a roguelike that will now launch a few weeks later. Demon School is a tactics-style JRPG inspired by Persona games, and it's now been pushed back nearly 2 months into November. And Devolver Digital's upcoming Baby Steps will also be pushed back a few weeks, and they even made a trailer to celebrate.
There it goes.
Turning now to some Sony news, and their head of studios Herman Holst recently gave an interview to the Financial Times where he spoke about the challenges of balancing the creative with the commercial. Quote, "I don't want teams to always play it safe, but I would like for us, when we fail, to fail early and cheaply," end quote. Yeah, well, I bet your shareholders would have loved to have seen that too, but the live service bust out has happened nonetheless. Speaking specifically about the crown jewel in Sony's failure folder, Concord, here's what he had to say, quote, "We have since put in place much more rigorous and much more frequent testing in many different ways. The advantage of every failure is that people now understand how necessary that oversight is," end quote. People. Regardless, the live service train keeps on a chugging, and Sony's gluttonous ambition on this front hasn't netted them many great results. When questioned about Sony's previous goal of having 10 live services launched by March 2026, Holst worryingly said this, quote, "The number of live service releases is not so important. What is important to me is having a diverse set of player experiences and a set of communities," end quote. I am sorry to break it to you, my dude, but the number of live services is important. In fact, it's very important. We only have a certain number of collective hours across the entire game-playing population, and a huge volume of those hours is already soaked up by deeply entrenched games like Fortnite, Call of Duty, Roblox, Minecraft, and more. There's very little room for new, successful live service titles, which is why, for example, Ubisoft shut down X-Defiant last year, despite it being a pretty decent shooter, and it's also why we start running the shutdown clock the minute a zany new team shooter is announced. Anyway, all of that live service talk aside, Sony are actually pretty good at managing their studios and letting them get on with what they want to make. Mikhail Haveri is brand director at House Mark, the studio behind the incredible Returnal and the legendary Resogun. Here's what he had to say about the moment Sony acquired them back in 2021. Quote, "It was a little bit scary. Being bought by a bigger company feels like you're just about to be swallowed by this bigger fish, but it was more like we still got to function like a small studio, but with access to the resources," end quote. Sony is still trying to get into live services, but it appears as though they're taking a half step back from the world of esports. They previously bought the rights to the fighting tournament EVO, and having held it for only a short time, they're now on-selling it to Nodwin Gaming, a South Asian gaming, esports, and entertainment company. Sony is actually a financial backer of this entity, so they'll still indirectly have a stake in EVO, but it's a de-risked position given that the ownership stake is significantly reduced and shared with other financial backers. Sony will now become a new global sponsor of EVO, no doubt keen to help push their upcoming Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls, which by the way is just about to get a closed beta, so be sure to sign up for that over on the PSN if you're at all interested. One last bit of Sony news, it appears as though live service games are moving on from the humble PlayStation 4. 2 weeks back, Genshin Impact announced that they were no longer going to support the platform owing to hardware limitations. This past week, PUBG said the same thing, and now Yoshi P, the boss man of Final Fantasy XIV, is hinting that support for the PS4 version of the game may soon come to an end. Speaking to a Slovakian publication called Sector.sk and translated by 4Feed Gamers, here's what they had to say, quote, "My basic stance is that I do want to continue supporting hardware which has grown old, but I do have one concern, and that's regarding the OS of the PlayStation 4, and this is regarding the hardware regulations which were made by Sony. These regulations are related to the limit of the data, and because there's that limit of data, well, we are continually incorporating updates to Final Fantasy XIV, and we are now approaching that limit," end quote. He said that Sony have been working directly with them to find solutions for these limitations, but that Sony themselves are about to reach the limit of what they can provide. Long story short, if you're playing Final Fantasy XIV on PS4, it may soon be time to upgrade your hardware. Sony may be reaching the limit of the support they can provide to their last-gen console, but it appears as though Nintendo are at the limit of the support they can provide to their next-gen console. Either that or they just can't be asked. The newly independent Digital Foundry revealed a really interesting tidbit during their recent post-Gamescom podcast. Here's what John Lindemann had to say, quote, "Nintendo seems to be almost discouraging Switch 2 development to some degree. I've spoken with plenty of developers where they were told that their game, they should just ship it on Switch 1 and rely on backwards compatibility. There's a lot of developers that are unable to get Switch 2 dev kits. We talked to a lot of devs at Gamescom this year, and so many of them said the same things. They want to ship on Switch 2. They would love to do Switch 2 versions. They can't get the hardware. It's really difficult right now," end quote. That is pretty wild. Imagine launching a brand new console, the most successful console launch in the history of video games, and not providing the dev kits required for developers to make games for the thing. I mean, that's how Nintendo make a huge cut of their money, by the way. Third-party sales are a big part of any platform holder's profit and loss, so it's rather baffling that they'd be playing it this way. Is it some sort of production shortage? Unlikely, I think. It's not like Nintendo couldn't have projected how many dev kits would be required. More likely, Nintendo are tacitly encouraging developers to ensure their games still ship on a console that has an install base of over 150 million units. But surely developers are going to be naturally incentivized towards that anyway, right? A very puzzling situation that would seem altogether improbable, except for the fact that it's Nintendo we're talking about, and then it becomes like, oh yeah, that sounds like something they do. A little more platform news now, with Xbox locking in an October 10th release date for their Asus-made handheld, Microsoft are pushing out Xbox app updates in preparation. They just put out a blog post that read, quote, "Starting this week, Xbox insiders enrolled in the PC gaming preview will be the first to experience the new My Apps feature in the Xbox PC app on Windows 11 PCs and handhelds. You can conveniently access your games and essential third-party applications such as browsers, gaming utilities, or storefronts, all within the Xbox PC app," end quote. Bottom line for this is that your Steam games and your games on other platform launches will soon be accessible through the Xbox app. This is something that Microsoft has continued to hint at for some time now, going so far as to mistakenly include a Steam page in some of their Xbox marketing before promptly removing it. They recently confirmed that this cross-storefront integration was on the way, and since the Asus handheld is their first real roadshow for this new storefront agnostic approach, it makes sense that this rollout begins now. We still don't have pricing for the ROG Xbox Ally, by the way, which is kind of weird because it's out in 5 weeks, and also because they recently did a round of hands-on impressions at Gamescom. Various leaks put the base model at being around the same price as the Steam Deck OLED, which would make it a pretty good deal given all that cross-functionality, but the high-spec model is rumored to be upwards of $899 US, which is a hell of a lot of money. Please do take that figure with a grain of salt though, since it is unconfirmed, but the Asus ROG Ally X is $899, so I don't think those leaks are at all out of the realm of possibility. Turning to some studio news now, and we're learning more about the recently announced layoffs at Cloud Chamber, the studio who have spent the better part of a decade working on the next Bioshock game. Recently, Take-Two removed the studio and game leads before parachuting in Rod Ferguson, who had previously been parachuted into Irrational Games years prior to help finalize Bioshock Infinite, a job which earned him no shortage of praise and cemented his reputation in the industry as a strong closer. While Take-Two are parachuting Rod in, they're opening the hatch and shoving 80 other people out. Jason Schreier is reporting that of the 250 people currently employed across the studio group, 80 of them will be let go as Take-Two delays Bioshock 4 into a 2027 release window. Recently, Schreier reported that the game had failed to pass an internal review milestone, with the game's narrative being a key sticking point. Take-Two even sort of acknowledged the challenges in their own way, saying that right now they had a good game, but they wanted to deliver a great one, which is just about as close as you're ever going to get to these companies acknowledging that things aren't all hunky-dory. It's highly likely that we're about to enter a period of radio silence as the team reorients and prepares to reveal sometime in 2026. Summer Games Fest, maybe? Jeff Keighley, if you're watching, just comment down below. Let us know what to expect. One last bit of layoffs news now. Fresh off shipping the excellent Sword of the Sea, Studio Giant Squid has laid off one of its staff members. Natalie Spizzle was an environment artist who announced her job loss on Blue Sky, but she also confirmed that she appears to be the only one. Quote, "I believe I'm currently the only one laid off for now. Not sure where the rumors are coming from that it was the whole studio or majority of. I was one of 14 devs, so if that puts things into perspective," end quote. This normally wouldn't be a story, except for the fact that studio boss Matt Nava recently revealed that Giant Squid were at risk of going under. When he chatted to us on the FPS podcast last week, he revealed that it was really touch and go for a while until Sony's indie team swooped in and saved them, lining up a deal that would guarantee funding for their game in return for it being day one on Sony's PS Plus subscription service. It's unclear if the studio has funding lined up for their next title, but let's hope so, because this is a really special studio full of exceptionally talented people, and it'd be a real shame if they couldn't keep making games. By the way, if you want to get the full story behind Matt Nava's comments on the deal he did with Sony, you can find them on the most recent episode of the Frames Per Second podcast, or as a write-up on thisweekinvideogames.com. Link below the like button. Hey, speaking of the website, we've got a really exciting announcement. From the get-go, we set a goal of welcoming in expert columnists, giving you deep original insight into the world of video games. Well, we couldn't be more proud of our latest addition to that roster, Victoria Tran. You might know her in her capacity as the community manager for Inner Sloth, the developers of Among Us, who would later go on to found an indie publishing label, Outer Sloth. By virtue of the many hats she wears, Victoria has a huge amount of insight into the indie game scene, and that's exactly what her monthly Indie Insights column will cover. It's a behind-the-scenes look at the challenges and joys of indie game making, and her first column covers one of the sector's most notorious blights, copycat games. You know, the ones that are just straight-up carbon copies of indie breakouts like Unpacking or Peak, and that go up in the App Store to fleece people with shitty in-game spending. Victoria has a lot to say on the subject, so if you want to read that and more, then sign up as a supporter over on thisweekinvideogames.com. Very pumped to have Victoria on board, and stay tuned for more exciting announcements to come, because we've certainly got some in the works, trust me. So what got announced or delayed this week? Well, friends, there's a hell of a lot here. After Opening Night Live dropped 50 trailers on us last week, the Future Game Show dropped about the same. Then there was everyone else and his dog at Gamescom who didn't have the cash to get up on a showcase. And of course, there was Team Cherry, who just decided, like, fuck it, and they dropped a bomb on top of everyone and everything. We won't go through every single thing here, as a lot of it will no doubt crop up in the months and years to come as they get closer to release, so we'll skim through some of the highlights. Now, Jeff did have Nexon's We Have Tom Clancy's Division at Home game during his showcase, a title by the name of Cinder City, but you know what's even better than that? Actual Tom Clancy's The Division 2, which has well and truly reignited its roadmap for the next couple of years, headlined by a new game mode called Survivors, which is Ubisoft finally leaning hard into the survival extraction thing that this series unknowingly predated and left on the table big time. It wasn't until they left the restaurant, took a cab home and got into bed that they realized what they had done, so now they're finally turning back to try to make a grab of it. Survivors will be led by one Magnus Jansen, who earlier Division fans will remember as the creative director of the original Division, as well as Far Cry 3. He seemed to take a bit bit of a break before coming back to take care of that Avatar game a little while ago. No day for that Survivors update yet, but I'm definitely going to keep an eye on it. While we're here, we may as well cover the other random Gamescom Ubisoft announcement. After indicating that there would be no DLC for Assassin's Creed Mirage, which came out back in 2023, Ubisoft has said that they will be releasing a free expansion to the game featuring a new story chapter, new missions, and a new location set in 9th century Al-Ula, which is an ancient city located in modern-day Saudi Arabia. Interesting, since there were a few reports of Ubisoft meeting with Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund earlier in the year, which the company did not confirm nor deny, but hey, say no more, Eve. Say no more. Escape from Tarkov, the extraction shooter that sometimes likes to gouge its community, it's finally coming out of beta and entering a full 1.0 release. This is happening on November 15th, and it comes after over 8 years in beta. Those are some Warframe numbers right there. No console plans or anything for this one. It remains a hardcore PC thing only, at least at the moment. Speaking of hardcore, man, have you checked in with the horse game community yet? They are absolutely frothing over this next one, Windstorm, The Legend of Komori, which is the 13th century Mongolian horse riding game that went viral a few months ago. No violent conquering of Asia in this game though. Windstorm is focused solely on horse breeding, training, and riding as you play the role of a courier. This one's launching into early access on November 4th, PC only. Alright, back to the gory stuff now. Halloween, they're making a new game based on this slasher series. I bet you're wondering, is it an asymmetrical multiplayer game like all the other horror adaptations? Yes, of course it is. Why would you think otherwise? Apparently there will be a single player mode for it as well. However, you'll play as Michael Myers, surprise, surprise. No release date for this one just yet. If you think a combination of Armored Core like mech action, cowboy westerns, and Annapurna Interactive sounds like a good combo, then you're in good company. Bounty Star: The Morose Tale of Graveyard Clem is one of the titles on Annapurna's slate this year, and it's just got a release date for 23rd of October for PC, PS5, and Xbox Series consoles. Ed played a demo of this one at Summer Games Fest and thought it was a good little slice. Gonna be interesting to see what the unique Annapurna edge to this one looks like. Is it gonna be trauma? It's probably going to be trauma. Hey, speaking of trauma, War, that really intense World War II game, Hell Let Loose, is getting a follow-up, this time set in Vietnam. Now, this used to be developed by an Aussie studio until Team 17 in the UK took over with a new developer, Expression Games. They're the ones handling this next one too, which is due out in 2026. As for what the original team is doing, they haven't announced it yet, but based on the skull smoking a joint on their new website, I don't think it's going to be anything like this. Let's squeeze in a few more here. 1348 Ex Voto is a new cinematic action-adventure game set in 14th century Italy, coming from a new studio called Sedlio, made up of 15 folks. Set for 2026 for all platforms bar Switch. It's kind of giving the Order vibes. I guess you could go either way. Lost Rift is the survival extraction game from People Can Fly, who have really been through it this past couple of years. This one launches into PC early access on September 25th. Tropico 7 is a new entry in Calypso's Dictator Management series. Man, these must do really well. This one's slated for 2026 for all platforms bar Switch. If you like your strategy games a bit more spacey and or nerdy, you might be pleased to hear that there's a new Star Trek strategy game called Star Trek Voyager Across the Unknown, but that one doesn't have a date yet. That open world MMORPG Where Winds Meet, which is free to play but apparently not a gacha game, got a Western release date of the 14th of November 2025 for PC and PS5, while Rue Valley, a new time-looping RPG inspired by Disco Elysium and was actually endorsed by Robert Kurvitz and Alexander Rostov, now has a release date of 11th of November for all platforms. And finally, two release dates the team here are very excited about. The first is the early access release date for EA's big free-to-play live service Skate game, which launches on 16th of September for all platforms bar Switch. And the second big one is Luminous Arise, which is launching on PC and PS5 on November 11th. And there's actually a limited time multiplayer demo for that one you can grab right now. All right, that's enough of the announcements. So what came out last week? So we quite liked the Rogue Prince of Persia when it first launched into early access. This is the 2D roguelike Prince of Persia game from Evil Empire, who shepherded Dead Cells until the end. It finally launched into 1.0 this past week, and a lot has changed since then. Even the whole color palette, which honestly surprised me. I kind of like the purple. Anyway, the recent reviews for this one are sitting at very positive, with 91% of folks giving it a thumbs up, which is broadly consistent to what it was sitting at throughout its early access period. Speaking of shepherding, Herdling was that emotional looking herding game from Okomotive and Panic, and that one seems to have made an impact with a strong 81 on OpenCritic. GameSpot gave this one 9 out of 10 with a big emphasis on how well the game treated its creatures. Quote, "Together, the child and their ever-growing herd of companions, not pets, go on an often heartwarming, sometimes heart-wrenching adventure back to nature. It's a journey I'll remember for a long time thanks to its depiction of animals as unique individuals who, very much like us, are chiefly seeking love and safety. It was one of my favorite experiences in video games to help them find that safety and feel that loved." End quote. Big change of gears now, literally. How about that Gears of War Reloaded? This is the second time they've remastered this bad boy, so you'd think they'd be really good at it by now. This has landed at a strong 81 on OpenCritic, and yeah, it sounds like it's Gears of War again, which, you know, I guess, sure, let's do that. Here's what Checkpoint Gaming had to say after giving it 6.5 out of 10. Quote, Gears of War Reloaded is the definitive version of Gears 1, but only by default. A faithful remaster of a remaster that keeps the series alive and opens the door to PlayStation fans, but doesn't do enough to feel essential. It's both dated and timeless, clunky and exhilarating, simple and unforgettable, a solid nostalgia trip, but a missed opportunity to make the original shine for modern audiences, end quote. And finally, Story of Seasons Grand Bazaar was what we called the Good Harvest Moon last week, and that's checked out with the review scores, it seems, a strong 83 on OpenCritic, with lots of praise for the glow-up of what was originally a 3DS game. Here's The Gamer, who scored it 4 out of 5 stars, saying, quote, Story of Seasons Grand Bazaar takes on an older title that is far from being a series favorite and refines it into something that fans are sure to enjoy. Unrestrained from the restrictions of the Nintendo DS and with a new lease on life thanks to new features, refinements, and an overhauled presentation, Grand Bazaar finally manages to live up to its full potential, end quote. Okay, so what's coming out this week? It's starting to feel like the end of year games rush is upon us, folks, let me tell you, so let's get right into it. Thursday the 28th is a big day with Konami's latest remake and reminder that they used to make great games, or more specifically, Kojima did. Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater arrives. The reviews for this one are already out, and they currently sit at a mighty 87, with basically all the reviews talking about how the game has definitely stood the test of time in terms of its stealth gameplay and impactful storytelling, but how the remake itself is incredibly safe. Even with these criticisms, I'm sure Konami are pretty happy with this one. This one's available for all consoles bar Switch. Also on Thursday is Sega's revival of Shinobi, the one called Art of Vengeance. This one's been developed by Lizard Cube, who are the team behind the excellent Streets of Rage revival, another Sega property, and they've knocked it out of the park with this one too. Reviews for this one are already out on account of the game having advanced access, and they're also sitting at a mighty 87 at the time of writing. Austin also reviewed this one, absolutely loved it, strongly recommended it in fact. Link to his video review and the website right up below the like button. Great combat, great art, and a breezy Metroidvania structure are the talking points about this one. Crazy that we just had a strong Ninja Gaiden retro revival too. Shinobi comes out on all platforms. Couldn't not mention this one. Destiny Rising is also coming out on Thursday. This is of course the mobile version of Destiny developed by NetEase, with all the free-to-play and gacha engrams you can eat. Just how much of the current Destiny audience will make the brave and dangerous leap into this one? I'm very curious, because I think that a lot of people will. I think people are very ready to step into a new sort of Destiny experience. And honestly, having played some of the beta of Destiny Rising, it delivers quite a bit, believe me. Speaking of games that suck up your time, there's also a Kirby game coming out on Thursday. Did you get that one, by the way? Kirby sucks up time. Anyway, let's move on. Kirby and the Forgotten Land Nintendo Switch 2 edition plus Star-Crossed World is quite possibly the longest game title after Super Mario Party Jamboree Nintendo Switch 2 edition plus Jamboree TV. But I think when push comes to shove, Kirby has a lot more admirers because he's not full of random bullshit. There's a new story expansion in this one, of course, but it's also your first chance to experience Kirby's beautiful round form in 4K. Davy X Jones is one we mentioned a few times on the show now. This is a supernatural pirate FPS that's launching into early access on Thursday as well. Looks very cool, PC only for this one. On Friday the 29th, Lost Soul Aside releases on PC and PS5. Now this one was first revealed back in 2016 as a solo project by a Chinese developer called Yang Bing, and it was eventually picked up by Sony Interactive as part of their China Hero project. Yang got a team together and started fleshing it out, with Sony continuing to be a backer all the way through. It's a little bit Final Fantasy 15, a little bit Devil May Cry, and they're certainly not trying to hide those inspirations. Also interesting to note that this one hasn't really been marketed very much by Sony, so we'll have to keep our eye on this one. Jumping over to next Tuesday now, when September hits, and we've got Metal Eden launching on PC, PS5, and Xbox Series consoles. This is the fast-paced sci-fi FPS from Rycon Games, who are the folks behind the excellent Ruiner. Quite a few games with this vibe lately, but this one looks neat regardless, and the Steam demo for it seems to have gotten a pretty good reception. How you play these sorts of games on a controller though, I'll never know. One day later, we've got Damon Blades launching into early access, which was announced just last week at Gamescom. This is a co-op first-person action RPG roguelite, which I'm sure checks a lot of boxes for folks on Steam. This one comes from the team who made a game called I Divine Cybermancy over 10 years ago now, which was also a co-op FPS RPG that was messy and hard as hell, but people loved it. They also made Necromunda Hired Gun and Space Hulk Deathwing, both of which were kind of love it or hate them Warhammer games. Personally, I really like Necromunda Hired Gun, despite its obvious jank. Anyway, Damon Blades is out on PC early access this week. And finally on Wednesday next week, we have a game called Hirogami launching on PC and PS5. This one is being developed by Bandai Namco's South Asian studios in Singapore and Malaysia, but weirdly it's not being published by Bandai Namco. A Japanese outfit called Kakahashi Games is doing the honors. It's an action platformer game set in an origami world where your protagonists can fold themselves into different animals with different powers, and it's doing the whole low frame rate animation thing. Looks really nice, and there's a free demo on Steam right now if you're at all curious. Okay, so we briefly touched on this one at the top of the show, but truth be told, we already had this one penciled in for this week's show, and with Hollow Knight knocking it out of the pool, we thought it could use a little more attention, so put this on your radar. This is Demon School, a modern retro JRPG styled around the classic Persona games before they got cool. It's got all the best parts of that formula, including high school hijinks and managing your time around a school day, a social system to build relationships between your various party members, and of course, weird occult shit. But its big hook is a turn-based tactics combat system where you have to plot out the movements and actions of your squad all at once before executing them, and momentum plays a really big part, a lot of push and pull and knocking enemies into each other, which is always great. Love that in Midnight Suns. We've been really impressed by the past demos for this one during Steam Next Fest, and it's honestly a bit of a bummer that it's been delayed several times now, but if you're a tactics or JRPG kind of person, then do keep this one in mind when it rolls around on November 19th, headed to all platforms. If you do like the look of Demon School, you can check it out on our Steam curator page, which has links to all of the other put this on your radar stuff we've recently covered. I'll leave a link to all of that below the like button. Sort of free stuff time now, and over on the Epic Store, you can still grab Chimeru, which is that cozy frog sanctuary game, as well as Strange Horticulture, that mysterious botany puzzle mystery game. On Friday, they'll be replaced by Machinarium from Czech studio Amanada Design, and if you've been keeping up with these freebies, you will have well and truly collected the studio's entire back catalog by now. In fact, I think this one's actually been offered before. Great game though. The studio does have a new title coming out, but it's not due until next year, so maybe these giveaways are what's keeping them afloat, who knows. The other title on offer is Make Way, a top-down multiplayer party racing game in the style of those old Micro Machine games, which I absolutely loved, with the twist being that you have to build the track together before you race on it. This one got a pretty good rap when it came out, worth having in your library for those local co-op nights if your friends are into that sort of thing. Our feel-good story for the week is pretty fucking cool, to be honest. A little while ago, we learned that as part of Sony's live service push, Insomniac Games are working on a live service multiplayer Spider-Man game. And while it's perfectly natural to feel very skeptical towards any newly announced live service, I think it's also perfectly natural to want to web sling alongside your buddies cruising New York City or Queens looking for goons to tag team and wombo combo. That project was canned, but luckily Sony has started releasing their games on PC, and that means that modders can do the Lord's work for us. This one came to our attention from a tweet from Okami13, a handle that often unearths interesting things. They pointed us to a mod from someone who goes by the handle HBGDA on Patreon, and they make mods for Marvel Spider-Man. Just this week, they shipped the first functional multiplayer mod for Spider-Man, and you know what? Having watched it, I am devastated that the live service game was cancelled because this shit looks fun as hell. If you're interested in that mod, I'll leave a link to the Patreon page below. It supports up to 16 players, mind you, so grab some friends, I guess. Anyway, that's the show for the week. I'm working on 2 reviews right now, both of which are under embargo, so I can't chat about them, but do expect them to drop sometime next week. And then I'm going to be playing Silksong, and that's a sentence that I'd all but given up hope of ever being able to utter. Austin's working on a review for Metal Eden right now, which looks very promising. And we've also got an episode of the Friends Per Second podcast going live over the weekend with special guest Paris Lilly giving us a rundown of everything on the show floor at Gamescom since he was over there. On the website, we've got Victoria Tran's debut column, and Nathan Brown has an interesting piece going up real soon where he admits that he's just not that into Hollow Knight, and he wonders if Baby Steps really needed to be delayed in its wake. It's a fair question. All that and daily ad-free news coverage, reviews, and previews over on thisweekinvideogames.com. We'd love it if you'd sign up for free or maybe even become a supporter so we can keep the lights on. For now though, that's me signing off. A big thanks for watching, and a big thanks to this video's sponsor, Lost in Cult. If you truly love video games, then there's a good chance you'll love this video's sponsor, Lost in Cult. They're the outfit that put out thoughtful and beautifully designed books and music collections based on iconic games like Outer Wilds, Animal Well, Valhalla, and more. Well, they're back at it with one of their best and most requested collections yet, one based on the Alan Wake series. As with all books in the Design Works range, this is more than just an art book. A one-of-a-kind exclusive deep dive into the acclaimed action-adventure series, this 250-page hardback book includes new insights, development stories, and concept art, shining a flashlight on one of Remedy's most enduring franchises like never before. With visuals inspired by the Mind Place, Alan Wake Design Works fully immerses you in its world, with Lost in Cult's signature presentation, attention to detail, and world-class design. As always with Design Works books, there's a very special deluxe edition available exclusively during its pre-order campaign, running from August 18th to October 17th. Included within an exclusive foil block finished clamshell presentation box, you'll find the hardback Alan Wake Design Works book in a translucent wrap, encased in a dust jacket based on the in-game return manuscript. A whole treasure trove of extras is included within a crime file folder, including a Coffee World poster, an Oh Dear diner napkin, crime scene Polaroids, bookmarks, postcards, a full Bright Falls fold-out map, and a card signed by actors Matthew Peretta and Ikavilli. Also included is the full manuscript for return, available fully in print for the very first time. The first 500 orders of the deluxe edition will also receive a card hand-signed by Sam Lake, Kyle Rowley, and Jan Pulkkinen from the team at Remedy. If you're watching after the campaign has closed on October 17th, or just want the book by itself for all of its incredible content and art, the standard edition will remain available, but be quick on that deluxe version. Lost in Cult always produces truly incredible books that are must-haves and have constantly supported the channel, so if this looks up your alley, please show your support and help the channel out in turn by using offer code SkillUpAlan at lostincult.co.uk. That'll get you 5% off this brand new Alan Wake collection, or anything else from their amazing store right now. That's lostincult.co.uk, offer code SkillUpAlan. Thanks Lost in Cult for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.